How are you, Tilda?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thanks. What time is it? Are you in Australia at the moment?
I am. It's 7:30 at night.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Well, your day's ending. Mine's just beginning.
I thought it was beginning for you, isn't it? Yeah, we're
Yeah,
opposite ends.
yeah, I know. Well, I'm going to begin just by asking about sort of how nerve-wracking it was playing a real person and someone that you knew was going to watch your portrayal of them. Because I think it's always nerve-wracking when people play even just historical characters and they might have family members, but you knew that Helen was going to sit down and watch this. That must have been quite a nerve-wracking proposition.
Yeah, it was incredibly nerve-wracking. I think it's also because she's such an extraordinary woman, and I have so much respect for her. And I think through the process of learning about her and her life, I think that even it just became more and more terrifying almost as we went along, the idea of stepping into someone's shoes like that. And I think because we were tracking her life over 20 years as well, I play her from the age of 24 to 48. So there's sort of a lot of her that we get to explore in that time. And yeah, it was daunting, but also hugely empowering, and yeah, one of the best experiences I've ever had, to be honest.
And of course, I mean, there's so much kind of footage of her, and you know, there's so much reference points. But when you're playing someone, do you almost sometimes have to ignore sort of watching too much and not trying not to watch too much, just to find your own route to the character, and try and avoid it becoming a kind of impersonation of someone?
Yes, it's a great question. I definitely wanted to avoid that, and I hope we didn't come across like that. It was one of those things that, for me, I actually really clung to the footage. I watched heaps of her stuff. I listened to her voice all the time. I'd go on walks and just repeat exactly what she was saying to try and, even though we're both Australian, we have such different voices, and the way she spoke, the tone and the rhythm of her speech was very particular, and I really wanted to capture that. And also her physicality is very different to mine. So I really studied her actually for ages, and would start as a version of mimicry almost by copying her physicality in the way that she spoke. And I sort of felt like by creating some of these hooks or things that people who love Helen might be able to recognize, so the way she holds her shoulders or her arm or the way that she spoke, then it sort of almost gave us more freedom in the scenes to kind of just go and live in the moment of those dramatic scenes of her life, which of course we don't know about, so we had to guess and make up our own versions of.
Did you get the chance to meet her in real life?
I did. Yeah. I met her after we wrapped the film, so we'd already finished filming everything. I'd met her daughter and her granddaughter while we were filming, because her granddaughter's actually in the film. She sings the original song of the film, Revolution, which is so beautiful. And every time she sang that on set, I would just cry. She's amazing. But I met Helen at the very end. We were at this event in LA that was giving her a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I actually had to get up on stage and do a speech about her before I got to meet her. So that was even more nerve-wracking, because at that point, after spending like 2 months inhabiting her, I was just more in love with her than you could imagine. So finally getting to meet her at the end was super special, and she just lived up to all of my expectations, which I was very lucky about.
Yeah, because obviously, I mean, the news last week was so sad. But what sort of legacy does she leave behind her? Because I was sort of, when I was speaking to Unjoo this week, I mean, the song "I Am Woman," it transcends kind of pop culture. It's an anthem, isn't it, for a whole movement and feeling?
It is. I mean, I think that song will always be relevant. It's such a beautiful song, and it's so empowering, gives you so much strength. Every time I listen to it, I still feel that. She's done an enormous amount in her life, and I feel like it's her story and the things that she's left behind, the things that she fought for, has deeply changed the way that we all operate now, whether we know it or not. I mean, I think she was one of the first Australians to sort of move to America to pursue her dream, and that now feels like, as a young woman who's done the same thing, it feels much easier now because of women like her. And the idea of using your voice or writing a song about your own experience, I think, is much more common now. And she was really one of the first. So I think it's so important to look back and honor her.
Yeah, because that's the word. I mean, people say that her words and stuff, it gave people strength. Now, I was just wondering about the sort of personal effect she had on you from embodying her for a kind of period of time, because you had to get into her head, and I just wonder if that has left a kind of indelible effect on you, and if that strength kind of saw you through the shoot and sort of had a lingering effect too.
Definitely did. I really did, more than I expected to as well. Yeah, I mean, she's so brave, so confident, so sure of herself. And I think, I got the role at I think I found out I got the role when I was 22 or 23. And, you know, having to step into that space and sort of stepping into her confidence, it was a lovely gift to sort of catch a bit of it along the way, I think. And, you know, I've always called myself a feminist, but it was very important for me to actually go back and learn the history of feminism and all the people that came before us that have made the world that I live in today possible. And all of that knowledge has really deeply changed the way I think about myself as a woman, as an artist, as a person. So she's left a huge impact on me. And I think the more I learned about her, the more inspired I was.
And so were you singing in the movie? Was that your own voice?
I wish I could say yes.
Oh.
No. I did sing live on the day.
Yeah.
I'm not a professional singer, and I just do not sound anything like Helen. Our voices are very different. So we've all felt it was really important that the voice coming out of our version of Helen, that all of the Helen Reddy fans would be able to feel like it exactly was her. So we worked with this amazing artist named Chelsea Cullen, who's also Australian. And we sort of worked together to create those performances. So it sort of became almost, she gave an amalgamation of my voice and Helen's voice. And yeah, that was a real process. But I still did singing lessons and breathing lessons and all of that, because we needed it to look really real.
Because I was going to ask, because a lot of actors, when they'll have no problems kind of doing a big dramatic scene, but they do get nervous, when they have to kind of sing on set or sing in front of people. So I was going to ask if that was the case, but also, I mean, Unjoo mentioned that you obviously you spent a lot of time in like the circus when you were younger. So I just wondered if you're more kind of not immune to kind of nerves, but I guess you kind of grew up with kind of performance in your blood.
Yeah, I mean, it was so much fun doing those stage performances. There was a real element of that just felt kind of familiar, I guess, because I grew up doing a lot of stuff on stage. I think what growing up in the circus taught me is I'm not very afraid of embarrassing myself, making a fool of myself. I had a lot of practice of being embarrassing. And I think the beginnings process of sort of creating this character and trying out some of her physicality or like the songs or copying some of her movements. I mean, some of it, those early rehearsals were so bad and so embarrassing. And I feel like we had to go through that process. So I guess I wasn't afraid of that part of the process, which probably all of those years of being in the circus really helped me with.
I'm just really pleased I'm actually meeting someone who grew up in the circus. That line I was always thought it's from like a Disney movie, that line. I didn't think it was actually real, that people would actually grow up in the circus. I love that. What was your...
I ran away to the circus. I ran away from it, which I think is a weird version of that.
What was your act in the circus, if you don't mind me asking? What was the thing you used to do?
We sort of did a bit of everything, but I particularly loved hula hoop and trapeze. And our sort of troupe was known for kind of acrobatic pitching and sort of throwing people around in the air.
Wow.
That's that.
Nice. And I was wondering too, I was reading that you've written something recently. I was just wondering if you're willing to talk a little bit about that. And again, when you were mentioning about the kind of strength and the kind of empowerment that sort of Helen left on you, I was just wondering if that was partly what encouraged you to go out and write something of your own.
Absolutely was. I mean, I've always really loved making things, being a part of the creative process. And I did that a lot as a kid, made a lot of really dorky one-woman shows, was in love with people like Miranda July and things like that. And I think I've always been inspired by, you know, a lot of Brits, the Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the Michaela Coles. They're my heroes. And I think after playing Helen, I really had always grown up reading this book called Irma Vox, written by this Canadian author called Miriam Taves. She's a beautiful writer, and I'd loved this book and I always thought it would make a great movie. And after playing Helen and seeing her go through this struggle of not really getting the songs that she wanted to tell about her version of womanhood or her story, she had to go out and write one. And I was sitting there reading all these scripts that I didn't kind of connect to, and I went, oh, wait, there's this book I really would love to see as a movie and I could just go out and write it. So I've done that this year. And it really was the confidence that she gave me to sort of go out and attempt that. So.
I mean, obviously it's fantastic that you've written something, but it's still a shame, isn't it, in some ways, that I've spoken to actresses before that have felt they have had to write something, because it feels sometimes like in order to get a role that really pushes you, you sometimes have to create it yourself, which is kind of a shame that it is like that, though. It
is. I mean, I think it's just really, but I think what is incredible is there are these people coming out and sort of writing their own stuff about their experiences, and those shows have been massive hits, and it just shows that these stories about women talking honestly about their experience are really marketable. And I think that's been a lovely thing to see, and I think it is definitely changing. Even scripts you read now, I don't think, even from when I first started when I was 16, I think the scripts have really started to change.
Yeah, well, I mean, if with Phoebe and Michaela as kind of inspirations, you can't go too far wrong there. They're so brilliant.
Pretty amazing.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Tilda. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you, and best of luck with the movie and everything. And yeah, hopefully one day at a future junket, we'll actually be able to do these things in person. Who knows?
Real humans in the same space, wouldn't that be good? You too. Thanks so much for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey, you